This is the Liberty Blue Rangers Podcast. With Andrew Chelby and Nick Zararis.
Rangers fans, welcome to the best Rangers podcast in town. I am Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis, and we are Liberty Blue. We scream about the Rangers so that you can save your voice. That's how deeply we care about you, and we appreciate that you've joined us for the ride. This is episode 23, live on Twitch, recording just a couple hours early, but barring any breaking news, we will get to everything important over the last week in Rangers land. We'll put the full video up on our YouTube, Liberty Blue Podcast, and the audio version will be available as an audio podcast as well. Search Liberty Blue on your favorite podcast platform, and it should be there. Give the show that shiny and illustrious 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever else you can leave a review at. It helps the show out more than you think it does. At Liberty Blue Pod on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY Andrew, and that is Nick Zararis, Nick ZARARIS. Those are our personal Twitter handles to follow as well. Nick, they beat San Jose. David Quinn, take heed.
Nothing particularly spectacular in either of these games. They played pretty shitty in Seattle. They did not play well in that game. They got lucky to steal a point there, force overtime. And then Saturday night, they outplayed San Jose, but they still running into the same issue of not being able to put the puck into the net. I mean, this is more or less what it is at this point. There are no obvious solutions because there isn't cap space to improve the roster from externally. There's no young player who could be called up to fill in a roster spot right now. This is the team. Until they go from a 23-person roster to a 22-person roster and start accumulating cap space for the deadline a couple months from now, this is the team. You can rearrange the order. You can put different guys in different spots. Like, sure, playing Jimmy Vesey and Barclay Goodrow in the top six is changing things, and Vesey has been pretty good in that limited role, even though he doesn't really have the skill set for that. And Goodrow isn't exactly dragging down the second line, even though he's not contributing anything there. But other than rearranging the lineup, there are no solutions other than the team just playing better, which we've been saying for about a month now. The team just needs to play better.
The Rangers still, and we've talked about this for weeks and weeks now, the Rangers cannot score at even strength. They cannot physically muster up a goal. Julian Gauthier barely scored in San Jose on a wild deflection and could have saved for getting that tip. But that was the only even strength goal the Rangers scored this entire week. The two goals they scored in Seattle were both on the power play. The empty net goal, I'm not really counting. There's no goalie in there. It doesn't really matter. They scored one even strength goal in 120 minutes. Empty net, again, forget about that one.
That doesn't count.
I'm glad they scored it because obviously they needed the second goal, but as a quote unquote like real goal, I'm not counting that as an even strength goal because there's no goalie. Like, they scored one even strength goal essentially in 2 whole games. It's not good. Like, and we've talked about this before, and the problem just will not go away until the Rangers do something, whether that be a trade or I don't know, like contact a spellcaster maybe to magically get the Rangers to score more goals at even strength. Like, I don't know how they go about fixing this with this current roster, but the same problems that they had last week, they haven't magically gone away. Zibanejad on the power play, cool, great. Please score at even strength, please. I am begging, I am pleading. Please do something at even strength because Zibanejad and Vinny Trocheck, he did great to score the equalizer late in Seattle. But again, like, if they're not up a man, they're not doing anything. And that's like, you can play well and you can do all these things and whatever, but Capo Caco is never going to score goals because my guy is getting all of these plays and he's hitting posts and the puck is going through the net. He's like, I mean, he's doing everything on the planet except for score right now, and he's looked really good. It's not his fault that the puck isn't going in the net. It's just it be like that sometimes is kind of the only explanation that we have for that. But ultimately, They can't score at even strength, and two more games magically haven't solved that.
The old expression that old heads love to say, and I don't particularly understand it because I don't know the rules of horseshoes or hand grenades, but almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, which has kind of been the story of the Rangers season so far. It's great that they're generating a lot of offense at 5-on-5, that they're getting the puck near the net, but until the puck starts going into the net, it's just not, it's hypothetical at this point. It's the same with, of course, Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere right now. They are both playing considerably better than they did last year in the regular season. They're still not putting up counting stats, and those counting stats were part of the equation for figuring out what the team was going to look like if it was going to be successful this year. You subtracted 3 players from your top 6 last year. You said you were sliding Kakko and Lafreniere up. You bring in Trocheck for Strome. You needed to find a way to score roughly 60 goals between those 3 spots. Right now, you're not getting anywhere near that combined from Trocheck, Lafreniere, and Kakko. And then the other thing, and it's encouraging that Shesterkin is starting to get into a rhythm here that will go away with helping the team, even just psychologically, even if they're going to start scoring in bunches at some point, it will that they have a top 5 goalie in the league once he gets going. He was great in Seattle. He pretty much dragged them to overtime in Seattle. It sucked to see how pissed he was after they lost in overtime because he deserved a better fate than that, where the rebound just came right out to Justin Schultz and no defender was within 5 feet of him, and it was pretty much an open net to tap the puck into. Just, it's good that Shesterkin's getting on a roll, and that's encouraging. But until the puck starts going in net, it's just going to be a lot of frustration.
Alexis Lafreniere needs to start scoring, and he's somebody that we haven't talked about a lot, just because again, like he's still in his barely in his 3rd season. Like there's a lot of room for him to grow, and I'm not saying that there isn't. Like I would imagine that in a few years from now he'll be a top player in the league, but right now he's got 2 goals in 19 games. He's playing with at least decent talent. Like it's not as if he's getting put on the 4th line with Ryan Reeves. Like he should be out there creating some kind of scoring opportunity. And he does have 5 assists, so he has 7 points, but he's somebody that was taken 1st overall for a reason. Obviously, he has the skill set that 1st overall talent should have. At least that's to my understanding what Alexis Lafreniere is to this point. I'm not saying that he has to be like this generational 300 point per season kind of player, but 2 goals in 19 games in your 3rd season in the NHL is low. And we have to say it like it is. Alexis Lafreniere right now offensively is struggling. He needs to be more of a presence, at least in the offensive zone. He has to, 2 goals, like, cut it any way you want, but this is somebody that was expected to at this stage of his career, and again, very early on, but 3rd season now, to be more of a presence and to put more pucks in the net. And so far that hasn't really happened. And if we want to talk lack of 5-on-5 offense, then we have to mention Lafreniere as well.
So a couple of things about that. Number one, generally speaking, he's a facilitator, not a finisher. That's going to be the biggest issue. Again, we've talked about this 3 weeks in a row now. They have like 9 guys who are great at facilitating and manufacturing offense, but the only person who ever actually shoots the puck is Kreider, and he hasn't been great to start the year. He's been okay. He's been better as of late, but that would be the first thing I would say. Number 2, the kid line, the kid line that they put together about 2 weeks ago, it's been hit or miss. There have been games where they really badly at 5-on-5, and then there were games like the other night where they put at 5-on-5. But generally speaking, the big issue for them, and I think this will speak to your point about the offense, they're usually out there with the 3rd defensive pair, with Jones and with Schneider, or with Hayek and Schneider. And those guys on the back end aren't really going to be able to give them anything offensively, maintaining zone time, and it's harder. And on top of that, I wrote it down because they got 10 minutes of 5-on-5 against Seattle, and then they got 10 minutes of 5-on-5 against San Jose. It's really hard when you're only getting out there because that power play time, they end up with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the end of the game, but that's spread out over 4 power plays. So you're not getting as much ice time. And I think it'll come, like I've been saying for a while now, the offense is slowly improving here. I've got a little handy dandy visual to show you to support my claim here. So that save percentage, this is goal differential. So first here, you've got a very clear-cut dive where they started out of the gate really well on opening night. They scored 6 against Tampa Bay. Really slowly egressed down to a divot around game 11, which I believe was the first Arizona game, if I remember correctly. And then the last 5 games or so, the goals are starting to come, which is encouraging. But that's more, we're speaking to the defense tightening up as well, because this is just goal differential, not just goals. And then we go back here. And this will speak to what you and I have been talking about for a while now about it not finishing and looking where the most common areas where the Rangers are shooting from. They're shooting from the high slot, they are shooting from the top of the left circle, and they are shooting from the bottom of the right circle. Those are not particularly dangerous areas to be shooting from. When you're shooting your most common scoring chances from those low danger areas, it's really hard to result in and I know the high-end players are pressing. We talked about it last week when we went through the game by game on the shot maps, where Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, Trocheck, not really in those dirty areas up and around the net mouth. It's more of the Sammy Blais and the Jimmy Vesey and the Barclay Goodrow types who are just trying to stay in the lineup, who are going to dive to the net because they know that's what you're going to have to do. And at some point, we will have to address the fact that the team's high-end players aren't doing that. And then one other thing I wanted to touch on, save percentage. They've been above average league-wide in Corsi, which is encouraging. They are controlling the flow of play. But again, like we've been saying for the last couple of minutes here, they're not scoring. It's great to control the puck, but until you start putting it in the net more consistently, you're going to rely on your goalie a lot to win a lot of these games 2-1, 3-2 when you can't score more than one goal at 5-on-5 most nights. It's a tall order.
I mean, that reminds me a lot of what the Hurricanes have been doing for years now, of just like, we're gonna dominate play, we're gonna have the puck on our sticks, but does that end up in the back of the opponent's net a lot of the time? The answer is no. And that's fine. Like, controlling the puck is good. Controlling the play is good. Like, you want your team to have the puck on your stick. I feel like that's not, I'm not breaking any news here, but the fact of the matter is that there has to be some kind of best of both worlds situation in which you limit the chances the opponent has, but also the time that you have the puck, you are dangerous with it. Not just that you have it and you're passing it around 1,900 times looking for a perfect shot, which ultimately either goes wide or a pass gets broken up and the play goes the other way. Like, if you pass the puck, if you have the puck in the offensive zone and for 45 seconds you're out here just passing on the perimeter and there's no shots, you are controlling the play, but are you dangerous? The answer is no. Like, there has to be some kind of medium of maybe the Rangers, like, in practice need to institute a shot clock. Just have a legitimate, like, I don't know, 30 second, 20-second, whatever, like, shot clock out there, and then whenever it hits 0, there's a buzzer and they skate laps, or like some, I don't know, just something like that. Because a lot of the times what they will do is when they control the puck, they will pass it and pass it and pass it, looking for the great play, the spectacular play, as opposed to I have the puck on my stick. There's some kind of lane for me to just throw it on it and see what happens. Let's do that instead of passing it 9 more times and looking for that highlight reel play, which a lot of times just gets broken up, and the Rangers have nothing to show for their 45 seconds of zone time.
To some degree, I understand that frustration, and it feels more glaring because the goals haven't been there. But compared to years past, they're shooting a lot more than they did last year, the year before that, at 5-on-5. It's just the chances aren't particularly good. And from low danger, from the top of the circle, they're from the high slot. They're not finding the net. And that's part of why it seems like when they do maintain sustained zone time, the chances they get aren't particularly good because they are circling the perimeter for a while, waiting for a play to develop. And we've been waiting for some of these high-end players to make a play around the net. This next chart I'm about to show you, before we start talking a little more detailed, is just in terms of helping create offense for your line mates and creating offense for yourself. You see Panarin all the way at the right, and you see Zibanejad on the right, and Adam Fox with them. Other than that, there is not a whole lot of chance creation going on this team. And that speaks to a lot of the skill sets that this team has, especially when the bottom six has struggled to score the way it has this year. When the fourth line gives you basically nothing in terms of offense, which is fine, but that means your third line is going to need to be able to contribute something for you. And it's difficult when you think about it as a math problem. You need to score at least 3 goals most nights to win in this league. If you are only getting 1 at 5-on-5, you're not going to be able to score 2 goals on the power play, because that means you're going to be working at a 40% conversion rate if you get 5 chances a game. And power plays don't operate at 40% over the course of an entire season. They don't. I mean, the best in the league last year was Edmonton, who was 28, 29%. And all due respect, Zibanejad, Panarin, great players. Neither is Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. And that's the real issue for the Rangers right now, is they're banking their entire team's success on the power play scoring because they can't do anything at 5-on-5.
If you pull up that chart again, one thing that really kind of interests me is if you take a look at the bottom left, you'll see some names that you expect to be there, like Gauthier, like VC, like Colorado Avalanche legend Jordan Hunt. Like there's some players in there that you don't expect to be these elite dual threats because they're not top 6 players. But Vinny Trocheck, all the way down there, is at the bottom left corner. That's the one that is concerning, and that's the biggest red flag, is that he was brought in to be the second line center, to be the top 6 player, and through 19 games or however many games that the Rangers have played to this point, like clearly the stats are saying that Vinny Trocheck, when he's on the ice, has not done a whole lot. Like at least offensively, he is doing some cardio, is essentially what that graph is showing. Like he's skating, he's getting his calories in, but like other than that, in the offensive zone, Vinny Trocheck has not done enough to be a legitimate threat on the offense, and that is kind of scary because this man has essentially a lifetime contract. Like he has what, a 7-year deal from this team. He needs to do more. Like he was brought in for Ryan Strome, who, as you know, we can joke and meme about him and all these things, but at the end of the day, like he was putting up points at least with Panarin. Like every now and again, Ryan Strome will do things offensively, and like it's tough sometimes for top 6 players to move into a new system, a new city, a new team, a new org, all of these things, and then just magically bring over all of their talent from day one and create and do all. Like it takes time. Like we have to be realistic. Like sometimes it's easy. Sometimes for top players, it takes a while. If you're a player that has Trocheck's skill set, it takes a minute to understand, okay, this is a new system. How do I fit within this system? How do my teammates play around this new system? And just getting the hang of how everyone operates is going to take time. But with that said, Vinny Trocheck has the skill set to just create things by himself as well. He's not that kind of player that needs to necessarily rely on his teammates to create something for him. He has the skill set to do it by himself if and when he wants to. And so far, I haven't really seen a whole lot of that. And that, to me, is the most worrying about all this. And he's 19 games into a lifetime contract. I'm sure there'll be moments where he does that and it'll be great. But for right now, he seems kind of, I don't want to say scared, but like he just kind of seems very status quo with things, as opposed to, I'm not doing enough offensively. How do I change that?
So the first thing we can touch on, and you said this before when we were talking about the Rangers becoming a volume team, whereas in years past they had been a quality team. Carolina is the most volume-heavy team in the league. Since Ron Brindamore became the coach of the Hurricanes, no team averages more scoring chances per 60 in the NHL than the Carolina Hurricanes the last 5 years that Rod has been. Trocheck was part of that volume. He's going to be down low, banging the puck, looking for rebounds, deflections, the greasy stuff, and that's not typically the way the Rangers have played the last couple of years. And now his impact at 5-on-5 is a little bit more of those lower quality chances. And we still really haven't seen him and Panarin find that synergy the way Strome and Panarin had. Where granted, a lot of that synergy was just Strome being in the right place at the right time and Panarin hitting him on the stick. But until Trocheck starts finding that chemistry with Panarin where he gets a better understanding of where he needs to be on the ice as opposed to just kind of feeling his way through it, which to your point about the status quo, I mean, his counting stats are fine. I think he has like 9 points in 18, 19 games. That's fine, but you're expecting a little bit more from his price point, what he was brought in here to do. And this is going to be the main thing that I wanted to talk about on this week's episode is the Rangers really overachieved last season. Nobody expected them to go that far last year. Everybody just kind of assumed that the kids would take a little bit of a leap and they would make up the difference of losing 2 or 3 key guys. And I know I got a few people in the replies to the clip I posted last week talking about this. There's a real argument the Rangers team the first half of the season last year was more talented than this group because this group isn't putting the puck in the net. That team last year, they came out of the gate like 16-5-3, 16-5-7, something like that. And granted, a lot of that was just Shesterkin being a 940 goalie, which he hasn't been so far. But last year, the results pre-deadline at 5-on-5 were not good. They were a low 40% in Corsi, expected goals, high danger pre-deadline. Then you got to the deadline, you added 2 top 6 forwards, you added Tyler Mott. Things stabilized at 5-on-5. The puck went in the net a little bit more. They were able to control play a little bit more. And until they can get something going at 5-on-5 consistently on offense, they're going to have a hard time against good defensive teams. You'll notice when they play teams that are very well structured defensively, it's basically impossible for them to score because they're so reliant on creating chances off of the rush. And that was something I was talking with somebody the other day with. I forget who it was. I was DMing back and forth with, and we were talking about it. The rush chances that Zibanejad and Kreider have done the entirety of their time here in New York, where they gain the zone with speed and it's a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2, and they usually end up in the net or get a good chance out of it. Those haven't been there this year because teams are playing to slow that down and forcing the Rangers to play that sustained pressure in the offensive zone, which they know the Rangers aren't particularly good at. To your point before about them being in the zone a lot but not really doing anything in there, because they don't have any shooters. Their best shooters are Zibanejad and Panarin, and those are playmakers. Those are guys who are always going to be inclined to pass first unless you're on the power play. And even then, Panarin still refuses to shoot on the power play at times because he's always looking for that one-timer. Until they can find a means of scoring. We talk about it in football where you got to have your layups, your gimme plays, where if you need 5 yards, what can you do to get those 5 yards? We like this concept. Right now, the Rangers do not have that at 5-on-5 where they don't have all right, go get the puck in the corner, high to low. The only type of play like that we see is on occasion when they can win a faceoff clean, which you mentioned before, the Gauthier goal, that only happens because they won the faceoff clean, and the Trouba deflection, that's a preset play. Off of faceoffs and on the power play, they have some stuff. They don't really have anything in the offensive zone that's particularly good other than Adam Fox making somebody fall down to the ice because he's smarter than everybody else. They don't really have anything to do in the offensive zone.
The argument of the analytics is one that anti-analytics people will make about the Rangers, and they'll be like, "Hey, look, the Rangers are supposedly better with these math numbers, but they're not winning more games." Well, I think the fallacy there is like, okay, well, they played like ass last season, but because Shesterkin was so good, he literally put up like a Hall of Fame worthy season for the Rangers to win as many games as they did, and the offense was scoring just at the right time a lot of the time to just have the Rangers win games. It's not as if that the system in and of itself was so unstoppable that the Rangers were winning this many games last season. It was the opposite. Like, as you mentioned, the analytics were like, this team isn't very good, but their goalie is incredible and is masking a lot of these issues, which Lundqvist did for literally the entire duration of his career. It happened a lot last year of the goalie is unbeatable and the Rangers will score exactly the amount of goals that they need to score, and that's the game. Good luck, have fun. That's what the Rangers did last season. And for this season, the Rangers analytically, and you can analytics, eye test, whichever one you prefer, you can see the Rangers are playing better. They're not giving up the most egregious plays on the defensive end like they have been in years past. Like, they've clearly gotten a lot better at it. But also, hockey is the most luck dependent sport in the world. Like, that's one thing to keep in mind is at the end of the day, there's no other sport in which you can fling a rubber disc 50 feet out, it hit 9 bodies, and it goes into the net just because hockey is stupid. Like, there's no other sport that this happens in. So hockey is just luck dependent sometimes. Sometimes you can have the best plays, you can have everything go right for you, but the puck just doesn't want to go in the net. These things happen. And while the analytics last year were bad and they were winning, and this year they're good but they're losing, it's like, well, you have to factor in everything involved before you kind of be like analytics bad or eye test bad or like whatever, whatever the argument is. You kind of just have to take a step back, and you look at the whole picture and you say, well, they are playing better. It's just the puck refuses to go in the net, and it unfortunately, like, there's no better answer right now than it do be like that sometimes.
Hockey is the most random sport. The higher seed in the playoffs wins the least of the four major sports in hockey compared to baseball, basketball, football, and hockey. The lower seed wins the most in hockey of the four major sports. The last thing I want to touch on in this part of the conversation before we start talking a little bit, I don't know if you got a chance to read it or not, but I read Larry's column this morning, and one of the things in there, just where is it? Is this goals? Saved. Yeah. This is the point I wanted to make before, but we moved on to talking about Larry's column and kind of where the roster's at the moment. The save percentage is getting there. That's the biggest thing, and the reason why I'm not as worried. I didn't think Igor was going to be a 905. I don't think he's going to sniff 930 this year, but if he's between 915 and 920, they'll be fine. The shooting percentage will come alongside that. They have too much talent on this team to not be a 9-10% shooting team. And Igor is good. I know that sounds obvious to say, and it's only 20 games into the season at this point, but Igor will figure it out. He's getting into a better run of form here. He's up to 8th in goals saved above expected in the NHL. Andrew, I'll give you $1 if you can guess who's directly in front of him, who is 7th in goals saved.
Is it Ilya Sorokin?
It is not. He is 3 spots ahead of him.
Okay. It better not be Alex Georgiev. That would be something. It is
Alexander
Georgiev.
Man.
Well, my Venmo. I Venmo you for restream. Yes. So there you go.
Yeah. No. So the one thing I wanted to touch on, and in Larry's column, it was very refreshing to read a Larry column that wasn't like, just what had happened in the last week, that like there were clear points lined out and why he thought what they should be doing. Point number 1, and I can't believe we got him saying it. I can't believe we got Staples saying it. It's like the end is nigh for Ryan Reeves as a Ranger because they need that cap space. They absolutely need to start banking that $1.75 million every month till the deadline. And Gauthier is playing well enough that he deserves to stay in the lineup. They're for all of his not being able to finish and almost scoring, he is playing considerably better than Ryan Reeves has at any point so far this season. If you have a fourth line of Carpenter, Gaudreau, and Gauthier, you're fine. You will be fine more often than not. Sure, that might leave Sammy Blais on the outside looking in, and we know this front office is going to insist he stay in as long as they can. But Gauthier deserves to stay in, and you can't have a healthy scratch who's making $1.75 million. You need that space, and right now, that is the most obvious thing to start accumulating it, because I think Gauthier can play in one more game before he goes on waivers to go back down to Hartford. I don't think anyone's going to claim Ryan Reeves. If you really, really are that worried about it, you can work it out with him where he can do I'm not reporting if I get claimed somewhere, I'll retire instead. But that's the most
I don't know
obvious.
how that's allowed, by the way. I don't know why anyone's allowed to do that. Like,
what, just refuse to report?
Yeah. Like, I don't know why, like, it's okay to be like, maybe the NHL kind of like gives a blind eye for old players essentially in the league. Like, if you're 35 plus and you're like, please no one claim me because I'd want to just stay here, maybe they're okay with that. But like
Wayne Simmons in Toronto, where he's technically on the AHL roster right now.
Yeah, I mean, if the NHL like it wants to do that, then I guess. But what if, like, I don't know, what if Lafreniere was going to be sent down, and like, as an example, Lafreniere was just like, I'm not going anywhere, I'd rather retire. Like, what is the NHL going to do? What are they going to do? Because then then they're
He would
going to
have to go
start.
play in another league because the
Right.
Rangers would have his rights for one more year. And then once that year was up, his rights would expire, and then he'd be free to go to any team like a college free agent, like what happened with Kevin Hayes
I
or Jimmy
mean,
Vesey.
y-
Nobody does this because you don't want to waste a year of your prime
right.
in another league, but you could technically do that.
It's silly.
It's
Like
silly.
if you're old and you do it, like I don't. The whole situation is like weird. I know Jason Spezza did that a couple of years ago in
Yes.
Toronto, but it's just like I don't know, man. Like if you're content with being the 14th forward on a team at a certain point in your career, then whatever. But was anybody really gonna claim Jason Spezza at that time? Like,
Yes, Jason Spezza was good last year. Jason Spezza would have been the Rangers' third line center last year.
that's not saying a whole lot. But yeah, I mean, if Ryan Reeves wants to do that, then I guess. But will he do that? I don't think so, because Jason Spezza loves Toronto and he wanted to stay there, and that's where he wanted to end his career and all that. I don't get the same sense that Ryan Reeves is like, I'm ending my career in New York. Like I love nowhere else but New York. Like I don't think he has that sense. But at the same time, I'm sure his family moved here. I'm sure like it's tough to move when you're 35 or however old Ryan Reeves is at right now. It's like moving when you're older is not easy, and acclimating yourself to a whole new culture and and all that when you're at that stage of your career, is not as easy as someone like Lafreniere as an example or whoever else. But if he wants to do that, then I guess. But
Well, no, I'm saying it this way because it does seem like the Rangers genuinely do want to keep him around. It's just they cannot afford to keep him around because they need that cap space so that they can add a defenseman or one forward at the deadline because they waive him. I think I read yesterday they would have about $2.9 million of cap space if it were Reeves they chose to waive. There's nobody else really that makes a ton of sense because nobody else is making enough money. I mean, if you did Sammy Blais, he's 1.5 million. It would be a little bit less than what you would get from Saving Reeves, but from all accounts, they still want to try this experiment and see if they can milk anything out of him. So it has to be Reeves. And the reason Larry wrote about it in the context of the roster because Kravtsov should be back for the game tomorrow in LA. You can't carry 23 guys. You need that cap space. And Kravtsov desperately needs to stick. And they really need to give him a shot here. We talked about it a few weeks ago of they don't have a choice. Even if they want to trade him for something, he has no value right now because he's played, I think, 6-7 games this year because he's missed 10 of the 19 with various injuries and ailments. They need him to do something. But and the other thing is, what is there to gain by playing, that 14th forward type guy like a Carpenter or Reeves versus Kravtsov? You drafted Kravtsov first overall. You went through the shenanigans last year. You went through the shenanigans 2 years ago. At this point, you might as well just fuck around and find out. If he sucks, okay, you cut your losses. But if you can get something for him who has a top 6 skill set, or at least you thought you did when you drafted him, that's a lot more than I can say for Goodrow and Vesey. And Vesey's been fine this year. I don't mind if Vesey stays in the lineup. But you're not winning a Stanley Cup with Jimmy Vesey playing first line right wing. You're not winning a Stanley Cup with Barclay Goodrow playing second line right wing. You need Krakow and Lafreniere and Krasov to stick in that top 6 because you came into this year saying we think we can win a Stanley Cup. Right now, I don't know if they could win 2 games in a best-of-7 series because they cannot score.
It's interesting you mentioned Sammy Blais because I just pulled up his stats, and in 30 games in his tenure as a New York Ranger, Sammy Blais has 0 goals. So,
did you see that tweet this morning that I retweeted that Buchnevich has more goals as a Blue than Sammy Blais has shots on goal as a Ranger?
I did not see that, but that is incredible. Yes. Oh, yes. Man. Like, I get it. Sammy Blais, as we talked about with Trocheck, when you get traded to a new team, it takes more time for some players to find their niche on the team than it does for other players. Sammy Blais appeared to be one of those guys, and he was getting his stride in last season, and then I think tore his ACL or something like that, and he was out for the rest of the year. It's really difficult to come back from that and then just start putting up numbers. Like it's not an easy thing.
And he's playing on the 4th line. Yeah, he's not getting real ice time. Yeah.
Right.
That's the other thing. It's like they thought he was this project He's not playing. He's getting
not.
8
Yeah, he's
minutes a
not playing.
game.
Well, like like it's hard for Sammy Blais on so many levels to figure it out right now in the
Yeah.
midst of this scoring drought. At the same time, though, like Pavel Buchnevich having more goals in St. Louis than Sammy Blais has shots on goal as a Ranger in 30 games. I understand that the duality of situation where like Pavel Buchnevich is a top 6 player for St. Louis, so inevitably he's going to get more scoring
chances.
opportunities, more shots on goal, more everything. Like it's not a 1-to-1 comparison. You can't be like, oh well, Sidney Crosby has more goals than Ryan Reeves has shots on goal. Like you can't we can't do these things also. So we have to keep this in mind when saying things like this. But at the same time, it's another way to highlight Sammy Blais, like 0 goals in 30 games as a Ranger. Like this is who they traded Pavel Buchnevich for. They got a second round pick. Okay, great, sure, perfect, fine, thanks. But this is who they got. 0 goals in his entire time in a Rangers jersey. Like this can't happen.
I think realistically, I I I imagine he's a non-tender candidate after this year just because they're going to need that cap space because this summer the crunch is going to be even worse than it was last year. Yes, you're going to get Reeves off your books, which is nice. You can't get rid of Gaudreau unless you find somebody who would be willing to take him. That's the only other obvious money out because you take Kreider out, you got to find somebody who can score 25 goals. You take Trouba out, you need somebody who can play 23 minutes a game. And that's not saying much. Trouba hasn't played well this year. I was looking at Evolving Hockey's goals above replacement metric. He's in the 20th percentile of players of defensemen in the NHL. So like if you put all the defensemen in the NHL in a straight line, Jacob Trouba's all the way here on the left in the 20th percentile. Lieber Hayek has a higher goals above replacement than Jacob Trouba does this year based on how they've played to speak to that. So there are no obvious solutions here, which is why Andrew and I harped on if you're going to give Vinny Trocheck all this money and tie up your salary cap, you got to be sure because you're locked in now. This is the group. Like even if, say, you can find a way where you're probably going to have to trade somebody else out to have enough cap space to get an impact top 6 forward, which this team needs. Just flat out, unless Kakko or Lafreniere is going to start scoring consistently, okay, then maybe you say we only need a depth forward as opposed to a top 6 forward. But right now, this team needs a top 6 forward. It needs another defenseman just as a warm body because right now you're one injury away from somebody like Matthew Robertson, who's never played in the NHL coming up. There is not a lot of depth on this team. There is not a lot of cap space on this team. It's a really difficult situation to be in. And I want to transition the conversation here to talking about moving forward a little. The Metro is good. We all figured the Metro was going to be a good division, going to have 6-ish teams fighting for the 3 divisional spots.
Also, by the way, real quick, hey, maybe don't trade Nils Lundqvist for a bag of peanuts. Maybe don't do that. But anyways, continue.
Yes. That's actually a good way because I did forget something that was in that column that Larry wrote. And if Larry Brooks, who writes for the New York Post, who is a very trusted source for the Rangers, where he typically gets things because they trust him and they know he won't mess it up, is saying this organization's unwillingness to try unproven players over replacement level guys and fringe guys like VZ, like Gaudreau, like Carpenter, it speaks to a cowardice, a scaredness, whatever word you want to use, a unwillingness to make a mistake. That because the team has such a we need to do that, we need to make the playoffs, we need to make the playoffs. There's no room for error, and that's not a conducive environment for producing good results from your young guys. If your young guys are fearing any mistake is going to get them out of the lineup, it's going to be really hard for them to grow into the players they're supposed to be. Now, Kakko and Lafreniere have gotten there. It's taken a while, but they are good NHL players. They got to start putting up the stats. They're getting there. Hedl has been one of their best forwards this year when he's been healthy in the lineup. The defenseman, K'Andre Miller has not been that great this year. He still needs to get into the rhythm we saw towards the end of last year. The third D pair, the underlying numbers aren't bad, but anecdotally, I worry every single time they're on the ice. There are a lot of questions about this team and how they've chosen to use these younger guys. And now that there is no room for error because there is no cap space and there are no other young guys to call up, you realize just how urgent it all is that they figured this stuff out, and relatively quickly, because of how compact this division is right now. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Andrew. The Devils are 15-3.
They've won what, 12 in a row now, 13 in a row,
Yes.
like something
Yes.
ridiculous. They just keep winning. They're like,
Yeah.
even last week, the joke of the fans like chanting "Sorry, Lindy." It's like,
Yes.
I don't know how much Lindy Ruff has had in that, because Lindy Ruff I don't think is a great coach, but that's neither here nor there. Like the
And don't
Devils
add
are,
him on Snapchat. Do not
yeah,
add Lindy Ruff on
don't, yeah, him saying like, I have to text players on Snapchat because they don't respond to my calls. Like, I don't know, maybe don't call people. No one calls people anymore, Lindy. No one does that anymore. Like, come on, get with the times
No.
here. I guess he did get with the times because he's texting his team on Snapchat. I don't know. But yeah, like he regardless of what exactly Lindy Ruff has done to get the Devils to win 1,000 games in a row, like that, like the Devils are a really good team, despite despite is this a fluke? Like, are they gonna start crumbling down? Like, whatever the background noise is, the Devils have shown throughout this winning streak that they are a good team, and they will punish you if you think that they're not a good team. So the Devils are good, and the Islanders are winning games. Like, other teams are winning games. Everybody's winning games, and the Rangers keep fumbling the bag. They threw another point out the window to Seattle. Like, they barely won against San Jose. The goals are gonna come, but if they just keep throwing points out the window, the points will not come later in the season. Like, and I know a lot of GMs, well, every GM, I guess, for the most part, love to wait until the deadline to make moves. Why? Why?
They need the cap space, Andrew. That's why. They have to wait as long as possible to accumulate as much space as
I
possible.
understand that, but like Ryan Reeves is just like sitting there. Like, it's
their Drury's hand is going to be forced in the next
Yeah,
week. They
yeah,
are going
yeah,
to have to send somebody down, and it's going to suck if it's Gauthier, because he deserves to stay up the way he's played
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks. I really hope it's not him. It has to be Reeves. I mean, hypothetically, if you traded Kravtsov or Gauthier, you wouldn't have to send somebody down. But I don't think you're going to get anything for
No.
either of them. Even if you were to get you're better off keeping one of them than
Yep.
keeping Reeves. I think the fact that Gallant has been the one where, like, it's not like Reeves isn't available to play. He's been healthy scratched, I think 5 of the last 6, something like that. He's not giving them anything. Gauthier is. You keep the hot hand, and even if you think, well, you want to keep Reeves around, you got to win these games, man. That's the thing. And you just said it about the Devils. They have a cushion now. And you've talked about this the last couple of weeks, where the Rangers have a relatively soft schedule in November and parts of October. They weren't really banking points against the bad teams that they needed to. If the Devils go on a couple game losing streak here, they're fine.
Yeah.
They're absolutely fine. Whereas the Rangers, they're sitting at 9-6-4. 2 or 3 L's in a row, you're going to get leapfrogged. The Penguins are slowly starting to figure it out, which I figured they would at some point. There was no shot they were going to be as bad as they were during their losing streak. And then I imagine Washington will go on a little bit of a run at some point, even though they haven't looked particularly good. Just law of averages, things evening out. This is going to be a tough division, man. The Islanders look like they're going to be good. Carolina is basically the same team they were last year, and the Devils, even without a goalie, are still rolling. The math for the Rangers gets harder by the day with every fumbled point.
They need to start winning, and they need to stop throwing games. Like we've been talking about this all season long. Of if you beat bad teams, it's a lot easier to stomach a loss to a good team, or even a loss to a bad team. At that point, like it's a lot easier to be like, okay, well, we lost some game we lost a tough game in February that we shouldn't have, but we won all those games in November, so it's all good. You didn't win all these games in November. You're not doing that. You're losing points here and there. You're not taking advantage of the team that's in front of you. You're playing. Sometimes you're playing down to them. Other times, like we're kind of seeing a Jekyll and Hyde with this team. Of like when they played Colorado, they played really well. They lost that game in a shootout, but like shootouts are dumb. I'd rather have just continuous 3-on-3 until someone scores in a shootout, because those things are stupid. But that's neither here nor there. Like they played well, and then you show up against a team like Seattle, and you fumble the bag. Like I don't
They
know
got
why.
outplayed. Seattle
Yeah,
dramatically
like
outplayed them in that
there's
game.
no reason for a team like the Rangers to get outplayed by a team like Seattle. There's it shouldn't happen. And yet the Rangers kind of let it happen anyway. I don't like these things that just baffle me, and I don't know how to solve them. Is it a coaching thing? Is it a locker room thing? I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not Gerard Gallant. I'm not in his coaching staff. I'm not really sure what the problem is and how to fix it. But the fact of the matter is that these guys like play a different style depending on who's in front of them, and I don't get it. I think it's strange. The Rangers have to play their game the way they know how and dominate bad teams. Like they're a team that's built in a way that should at least dominate bad teams, and for a lot of the time this season they haven't done that.
Matty Beniers is very good. That really jumped out watching that game on Thursday night against Seattle. He was everywhere. He's 20 years old. He doesn't have an excuse. He's been very good on my fantasy team. He was one of the rookies I took a shot on. But that's the thing, man. Some of these other teams, you see the young guys. You see what Jack Hughes is doing in New Jersey. You see what Jesper Bratt is doing in New Jersey. Jesper Bratt was a 6th-round pick. You see what these young guys on other teams are doing, and then you're just like, when will it come for Kakko and Lafreniere? That's the thing. They banked those two guys making a leap in terms of statistical production, not just playing better, as being the difference between the post-deadline team last year and the team right now. They're not getting goals from those guys, so they're basically the same team they were pre-deadline last year, where it was Igor and the power play. Now, if Igor gets going here, they can rattle off a couple in a row. They'll be all right. But banking on your goalie being a 925 guy, a 925 save percentage guy, that's a lot to ask. It is a lot to ask your goalie to be the difference every single night for you. And I just don't know if that's a feasible strategy. Even though they are controlling play a lot, they're still not scoring.
They need to start scoring because otherwise they're gonna fumble some more bags. They're gonna lose some more points they shouldn't, and then by the deadline they're gonna be a wild card team, maybe if that. As we talked about, the Metro is really dangerous, and there's some
Yeah.
other teams in the Atlantic that are gonna fight for those wild card spots too. Like there's not a whole lot of space, and it's November.
Yeah.
The stat of like if you're in a playoff spot in during the Thanksgiving break that you are like 95% chance or whatever it is to make the playoffs, like that's great and everything, but the Rangers like really cannot afford to lose games, and it's November. Like
Yeah.
this is an important thing to keep in mind is like we are in November and we are talking about the Rangers can't afford to lose games. Like this is way too early to start saying these things and just keep and worrying about if they keep losing where their playoff status will be come a month from now. But the way they've been playing and the way they've been dropping points in games to bad teams is not making me feel confident. And that's one thing that really sticks out to me is okay, well, if they lose like 2 or 3 in a row now, how will they bounce back? Because the issues that they've been having all season haven't been resolved and right now really can't be resolved. So what are you going to do? Like if they start losing games, it might spiral out of control.
Okay. We'll do 3 stars of the week. We'll talk a little Thanksgiving. We'll get everybody out of here. So I went first last week. The floor is yours, Andrew.
All right, so my 3 stars are Trocheck, Gauthier, and Shesterkin. Shesterkin, for obvious reasons, he was great in Seattle. He was great in San Jose. There's not a whole lot he could have done in that Seattle game, and Shesterkin just lost the shutout in what 15 seconds left in that third period. I mean, he played great, so he gets a star. Julian Gauthier, thank you for showing up. You tip a Jacob Trouba shot, and you get the goal that eventually. I mean, like technically they didn't win the game, but if he didn't score the goal, then Adam Fox would have gotten the empty netter, and then they wouldn't have won the game. So congrats to Julian Gauthier. He got the unofficial game-winning goal in Seattle, in San Jose, I should say. And Trocheck, I mean, he had that late game tie goal, and he, when you need somebody to score you a goal, he gave it to you. We kind of talked about his inefficiencies so far throughout the season, but at least in Seattle, he played well, and we have to give him credit for that as well. He's got the game tying goal late in that game to force overtime, and the Rangers like kind of didn't deserve that 1 point to be
No.
to be honest. Like they got 1, should have gotten 2, but they deserve 0. So they got the 1 thanks to Trocheck, so he gets my other star.
So my 3 stars, Shesterkin for obvious reasons. He was great in both the games this week. Adam Fox has been the best Ranger so far this year. He's going to have a real good shot at getting his second Norris Trophy this year if he maintains the pace he's been playing at this year. In terms of the offense, running the power play, his defensive numbers are better than they were last year. And I'm giving Larry a shout out because Larry wrote a column that wasn't just phoning it in. It's nice to see when people can write well. They still have their fastball. Like, I know Larry's got to be tired of writing about hockey at this point, but it was nice to read a column today that was like, wow, Larry actually was mad about the same thing I was mad at. So I had to give credit where it was due.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, Larry Brooks definitely. There's some articles that he writes that's just like, dude, like please, like no one's forced you to say this. Like you can say what you want to say at this point. But that article, like finally some kind of fresh air, some kind of like, hey, these are the actual problems, and let me write about them, and that's good. Like Larry, do that more. I would love to read more of this. Please continue.
Okay, Andrew, your go-to Thanksgiving side dish is blank.
See, like it's tough because like we're not like I'm a first gen American and my parents are from Ukraine. So my side dishes are a little bit different than what a traditional quote unquote like side dish should be. I guess like I mean mashed potatoes are always great. Like but can never go wrong with mashed potatoes. They're always S tier. Just please don't make them dry. Like I know, like we have great mashed potatoes, but like some people have really dry mashed potatoes. Please, it's not that hard. Please just make good mashed potatoes.
Gravy or no gravy?
No gravy. Come on, we're a civilized nation. We are a civilized society. We don't need gravy in this world anymore. But hey, I mean, if you like gravy, I'm not here to stop you. You do what you want. It's a free country, but civilized society. We've gotten past the point to need gravy on your. If you need gravy on your mashed potatoes, make better mashed potatoes.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. All right, Rangers have the Ducks and the Kings.
What about you? What's your favorite side? You can't.
I
out here trying to slide under the question. Come on, what's?
I like sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are very good.
You're turning into Sam Stern with your food takes. I don't like it.
Sam's not on Twitter for the week, so I got to fill in the void, I guess.
We need no. This is the Sam Stern school of food takes, and I don't know if you've ever attended that school. I guess Nick has, but there's better schools. There's better schools in the no.
Sweet potatoes are very good.
That's a Nick Zararis L right there.
That's fine. I can live with that. I hope the Rangers don't lose to the Ducks. Like the Kings are decent defensively. The goaltending has been awful for the Kings. They should be able to win both of these games. The Kings are in second place in the Pacific, which kind of blew my mind when I looked at the standings earlier. The Ducks are the worst team in the league so far. Beat the Ducks for the love of God. And then if you play the Kings tight, that's fine. But you should beat the Kings. Their goaltending has been awful this year. The Kings are a 2-line team. They play okay defense. Please beat the Kings. The Ducks, I'm not worried about. If you lose to the Ducks, then I'm actually going to start like pounding the desk and asking for real concrete changes. But these are 2 winnable games. Take care of business. Go into Thanksgiving on a high note. Please don't make me make a video on Thanksgiving Day being miserable. Please.
You're already eating sweet potatoes, so are you not miserable already?
Sweet potatoes are good, Andrew. I don't care.
No, that's no. I'm like Consuela from Family. I'm like, no. No.
All right. That'll do it for this week's episode. Make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Leave the show a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe to the YouTube. Like the videos on YouTube. We're gaining subscribers on YouTube, which is nice to see. Anybody joining the community is always fun. We have good conversations, and hopefully the Rangers can start playing better hockey so the show isn't as just Sam and I. I'm tired, Andrew. Andrew and I yelling
Sam
into
Rosen
the void.
And Joe Micheletti do Liberty Blue podcast.
Oh man, did you see? Forget it. Let's get out of here. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Make sure you're following Andrew and I on Twitter. Andrew's handle is Chelney Andrew, CHELNEY. Mine is Nick Zararis, Nick ZARARIS. Hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving. We will talk to you guys next week. Hopefully the Rangers come to us next week with at least 2 wins.
Fingers crossed. Later.